Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here with my reading wrap up for the first half of March. So most of the books I've read so far in March have been for the Irish Readathon, but there was one book that I started in February and hadn't quite finished by the end of the month. So I finished that at the start of March, and that was Her Night with the Duke by Quincy. This is a Regency romance, and in this book we follow a woman called Leela who is a widow, and she is travelling back from England. She has been travelling for a while since she was widowed, and she's travelling back to England for a family occasion where she has to socialise with her stepchildren who are around the same age as her. And when she stops at an inn for a night, she ends up having this kind of one night stand with this man that she meets. She kind of decides to throw caution to the wind and have this kind of night of passion and just be wild for a change. But then the next day she's horrified to find that this man that she's after sleeping with, whose name is Hunt, is actually a man who's about to become betrothed to her stepdaughter, and who also happens to be one of her closest friends. So she is in a little bit of dilemma, and the two of them are kind of trying to fight their feelings for each other while also knowing that for particular reasons they can't really be together. I quite enjoyed this. There's a lot of like chemistry between the characters. I like the banter between them, and I love these type of books now and again for just a real palate cleanser, and they're always really enjoyable. I did like Leela in fact that because she's a widow, she has a lot more freedom and kind of has control of her own kind of finances and the decisions she's able to make. It was exciting to be able to see Leela kind of almost be more free than I've seen other characters be. There was also a really interesting aspect of this, that Leela is actually half Arabic. Her mother is Arabic, so she has this whole side of her and whole side of her family that she's starting to really learn more about and kind of really embrace the culture of her mother that she never really had growing up. And she also deals with a lot of racism and just like negative behaviour by people in her social circles because of her family and because she is half Arabic as well. I did really enjoy this one. It wasn't my like favourite ever like Regency romance. I definitely preferred the Tessa Dare books I've read and Eloisa James, but I still did really enjoy this one. And it was also really obvious who the next book in this series would follow, which is Hunt's friend, and I really loved him. So actually for a lot of the book, every time he came up I got excited for the next book because I really can't wait to see how the next book follows him and how we learn more about this character who's quite mysterious. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it, and yeah, as I said, I can't wait to read on with the series. For my Irish Readathon reading, I started it off with a really great book, and that was Make Yourself at Home by Ciara Geraghty. And this is a book, as I see, this is a proof copy. I received this from HarperCollins Ireland in exchange for an honest review, and this is one of those books that when I picked it up, it's basically one of those books that I read at the perfect time. It was just exactly what I needed. I wasn't feeling great. I'd had a bit of like a stressy few days and my head was all over the place, and then I ended up reading this book and it made me laugh. I connected with the characters and it just made me happy, and it's just one of those books that I picked up at the perfect time. It was like I was meant to read it at this time. In this book we follow a woman called Magan. She is in her mid-30s I believe, and she is just after having a bit of a hard time. She has just gotten divorced. She has lost her job because of the stress of the divorce. She ended up shoplifting, which is something she does when she's stressed. She got arrested and she lost her job because of this. She's after foreclosing on her house, and she has to move home to her family home where her kind of like where her very eccentric mother lives. And she and her mother have kind of a interesting relationship from when they were growing up. Her mother had a drinking problem when she was growing up, and now her mother is sober but also runs a group called the Get Well Soon Club, which is basically an alternative to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's kind of for these mad wacky people to get together and just encourage each other, you know, not to drink. And Marianne is she's very straight and narrow. She's very serious, and she doesn't really fit into this like home anymore, and she has a bit of trouble like trying to figure out what she's going to do next and get herself out of this like massive life slump she's in. And she ends up getting roped into the Get Well Soon Club and like helping everyone out. It's just really lovely and warm, and this book was one that like will make you laugh but will also make you cry. I really enjoyed like Marianne as a character in this because she definitely came across to me as possibly on the spectrum and like slightly autistic, because she's very like just the way she thinks about the world. She really loves kind of matter-of-fact things. She loves figures, she loves percentages, she loves numbers in a way. She's not great with humour. Her social interactions like leave a little bit to be desired, but you can see the way she thinks about social interactions, and it's just maybe not the way like a lot of people will deal with social interactions, but she has a specific way that she likes to socialise with people. But she warms up to people slowly, and when she lets you in, like she does let you in the whole way. And it was just really interesting to see how she let everyone in slowly and how she slowly became this really core member of the group. It's the type of group that, like, if you liked the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society and the reading group there and how they all interact with each other, and everyone is a little bit mad and wacky in their own way, but everyone cares very deeply for each other and is always looking out for each other, that reminded me of the way the Get Well Soon Club was in this book. So I think if you kind of like that dynamic, you would like it in this book too. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just one, as I said, I picked up at the perfect time and was the exact book I needed when I picked it up, so I loved it and I really recommend it. Next book I picked up was one I've been really looking forward to reading for a while, and that is Homestretch by Graham Norton. This is a really interesting book that starts in the 1980s in this small town in Cork in Ireland, where one day a group of young people in the town, they're all only in their early 20s, they go out to the beach for a day. And then basically on the way home there's a terrible car crash and 3 of the passengers are dead. One of them is left injured for life and 2 of them get out unscathed. And the driver of this vehicle, his name is Connor, he ends up becoming a little bit of a pariah in the town. Like his family, like his friends, like it's very hard for him to kind of just live everyday life in the town now that this terrible accident has happened, even though it was just, you know, a freak accident. So Connor ends up leaving town. He goes to Liverpool at first, but then soon he kind of breaks all contact with his family and he completely disappears. And we both follow Connor where he goes next in his life, and we also follow his family who are left behind, his mother and father and his sister. And we see like how over the years like kind of life treats them, how the shadow of the accident never really disappears. And throughout this as well, Connor is also dealing with his like identity as a gay man, and he kind of finds that leaving Ireland gives him this freedom to be exactly who he wants to be, and he's always afraid of coming back and kind of having to almost like come out to his family even as, you know, the years go on and, you know, Ireland and the world become more accepting. I really enjoy this one. I've always said that I think Graham Norton just writes small towns and Irish people really well. He's able to write the exact type of people that you know of and people will know. You know, the doctor's family, the old lady who like lives up the road, the family who own the pub. Like, I feel like he gets these like kind of stereotypical people and families and characters really well. I found kind of the way Connor's sexuality was looked at in this book and how he explored it, and the kind of the trauma and the trials and tribulations he goes through kind of dealing with it, and the worry and the shame he feels. I found that really interesting, and I really liked how it was portrayed, and I really liked how near the end of it, like, it is quite, there are quite emotional scenes near the end when Connor does eventually decide to come home, and he finally, like, his mum and dad finally see him. Like, they always knew he was out there, they were always waiting for him to come home, and there are some lovely scenes when that does happen. This is just a book that you can just absolutely fly through. You get really engrossed in. The writing is very quick and easy to read. Great one, and I really enjoyed it, so I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read for the Irish Readathon was actually the group read, and that was the Hen Awards by Adiba Jaigirdar, and this is a really great YA contemporary book that follows a girl called Nishat who has just come out to her parents. Her parents are from Bangladesh and they are Muslim, and she's just come out to them that she is gay, and their reaction isn't necessarily what she wanted. It's like, you know, they didn't shout at her, they didn't scream, but they just seem to be very disappointed with her, and they're not really talking to her, and she's dealing with like a lot of, you know, sadness and trauma with that, and she doesn't really know what she's supposed to do next. She goes to school, she's just starting a new school year, and for this business project they have to open a kind of their own business, and she decides to open a henna business because henna is what she loves to do. It's something that she did with her grandmother, and it kind of, you know, brings back a lot of memories, but also lets her kind of have her art side and like her creative side. It like lets that flow for her. So she really loves to do that. But there's another girl in school called Flavia who's a new girl, and she also opens a henna business, but the problem is that Flavia is actually Irish Brazilian, so henna isn't anything to do with her culture, and Nishat has a lot of kind of like, she's a really difficult decision trying to figure out how she feels about Flavia also doing henna, because it feels like cultural appropriation, but also she actually has kind of feelings for Flavia because the two of them have a little bit of chemistry and they're kind of getting closer as well. It's up being like this kind of they kind of are each other's chief competition, so there is a little bit of you know, competition there between them two. So this was just a really enjoyable read. I really liked the writing in this. I really liked the fact we knew exactly who Nishat was. We could definitely tell exactly like how she felt about things, what she wanted to do. There's a lot of sadness in this book because of how Nishat has been treated by her parents, and because of like and the stigma that she feels maybe within her family around being gay. And then she also deals with some homophobic bullying in school as well, which was really hard to read. But I loved how Nishat never like really hid who she was. She always knew exactly who she wanted to be, and she never made herself small because of other people, and she kind of held her head up high, I feel like, for the majority of this book, and I really loved that for her. There are some really lovely bits in this, particularly near the end with her parents, that really kind of warmed my heart and made me feel a little bit emotional as well. The way they slowly started to kind of come around and really like take the time to learn and to talk to her and to, you know, expand their own worlds and their own understandings of things. And I think it's so important to see, and I really loved that was in there. One of my favourite things about this book was actually the relationship Nishat had with her sister Pretty, and it was just such a lovely relationship. They weren't just sisters, but they were best friends as well. There was only about a year between them, and I just love how they loved and support each other throughout. Even in the book, when they did have like some ups and downs, it never really lasted long because they were sisters. They do love each other. They're never going to stay angry with each other for very long, and they know exactly when they should apologise to each other as well. So I really enjoyed this one. I definitely cannot wait to read more what Adiba writes, because she does have another book coming out this year, and I will definitely be reading that because this one was so good. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this one, so I gave it a really strong 4 out of 5 stars. And the next book I read was No Escape by Arlene Hunt. This is kind of a crime thriller book that is set in Dublin, and in this book we are following 2 families who are kind of like criminal gangs, kind of criminal families, and the book starts off with where the main man in one of these families is shot dead, and then it's basically his family trying to figure out what exactly happened to him, who ordered this killing, following the effects of that on this other crime family that could be linked to it, and even if they're not linked to it, they could end up being blamed for it even though it's not their fault. We are also following these 2 sisters who have been illegally transported into Ireland. They were hoping for a new life, and they end up one of the sisters ends up getting caught up in a sex trafficking ring, and the other sister is kind of carted off away from her because she's too young. They're desperately trying to find each other again, and this kind of people trafficking, sex trafficking ring is linked to the main crime family that we were following, where your man was shot dead. So like, this was fine. I read it in like a day. It was a quick read, but I felt really underwhelmed by it and quite disappointed. I feel like it had all the like ingredients where it could have been a really great crime novel, and like there was just so much there, but it just felt so flat and it was just like lifeless. The writing was very when I first started reading it, it felt like almost like experts of like, it really felt like the story was like each chapter was written really separately from the other. It didn't really flow really well. There was a lot of characters, so every time a character would come in, I'd have to remember who they were, what side of the war they were going to be in, who they were related to, who they were connected to, and sometimes it was like hard to like remember that really quickly. I kind of thought that this might have been the author's first book, but it actually isn't. She actually has a good few books out. So yeah, I don't know whether it was just me, I just didn't really connect with the story, but I just found it really disappointing and I wouldn't really recommend it to people. So yeah, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Everything I have read for the first half of March, I am about halfway through 32 Words for Field by Manchan Magan at the moment, but I'm actually taking this quite slowly because I'm really enjoying it. So I'll probably be finishing that up at some point this week, and I'll talk about it in my next wrap up. But just to say that I am over halfway through this, but I'm really loving it. So yes, those are all the books I have read, and I would love to know if you guys have read any of these books, what you guys have been reading, what books you guys have read for the Irish Readathon so far. I would love to know if what people have joined in, what they're reading, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined in so far, who's been using the hashtag on Twitter and Instagram, because I absolutely love it. It just makes my day every day when I see someone talking about what they've been reading for this readathon, because yeah, I just absolutely love it so much. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.